Welcome to the channel. My name's Jodie Knight and I'm a popular investor on eToro, as many of you will know. You can view my live portfolio on the website. I'll put the link in the description below so you can have a little better look at it. But if you look at the screen, I just thought I'd get in the habit of showing you what I'm doing. Year to date, I'm up 17.56% and 2 years, 14.39% so far. I do expect this to change quite considerably over the next 6 months, just because of how I've configured my portfolio and what I'm expecting the market to do. I spent the last 6 months to a year building for this, so hopefully it pans out like I expect to. The website that you can check out a lot of my other portfolios is www.thecraftytrader.com, and on there you'll find my deep research in my core holdings. So in this weekly wrap-up video, what we're going to do is take a look at my core holdings that are around about 10% weighting. So that will include PayPal, Cleanspark, Sofi, and I am going to include Tesla on there because it's dropped considerably, but I do want to build this back up to a 10% weighting. We'll also talk about Bitcoin. I don't directly hold it in this portfolio, but I do hold it in cold storage. But mainly I'm going to look at it because it does impact Cleanspark, and that's one of my favorite holdings, being the second largest. I expect to see some quite a large moves soon on that one as well. First up, we've got Sofi. Last week, we did talk about it not having a pullback as large as I'd expect, but that's kind of unwound a bit during the last week. We did come back to this nice $7 support range here, just breaking past the bull market band. The bull market band does look like it wants to change bullish, so I'm not surprised it's bounced there now and headed back to the volume shelf here. It's not quite over it, so I would like to see some price action to push that higher. I am pretty excited going into Sofi earnings. I don't know why, I just have a feeling. Maybe it's wrong. I've been wrong before, but price is so low and the company has continued to execute. Given Noto's seeming confidence in his last interview, it's making me feel confident too, but maybe that's just I'm a bit biased because I've been holding for a while. So we'll see. I think regardless they're going to put up good numbers. I just don't know how the market's going to react given the and ahhing we're seeing out there. In response, it's going to probably come down to guidance, which they have been sandbagging a little bit, and they do have quite a pessimistic view on the market. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, the RSI is neutral. The golden cross just happened, and that is expanding. Again, that's bullish. We did have the 2 golden bars on flow, and that was followed by nice inflows. That's kind of leveled off, but it's still in bullish territory. If this could ramp up again, that would be excellent. Topside resistance is going to be this $7.90/$8 range. It's hit that a few times, 1, 2, 3, 4 in recent history. So how many times is it going to knock before it gets over? I'd love to see that properly turn into support so we can make an attempt on this pale blue resistance line and this volume shelf at 820. If we can start making our way back into this gap, that would be really nice. So that would require earnings to give us quite a nice bump, but we'll see if fintech's going to be favoured. Last week, we also talked about this large wick potentially being not as bearish as it first looked. It did hit this 788, 790 range and pull back quite sharply. Normally, I'd consider that quite bearish, but given the fact we'd had this breakout and we still have this measured move in play, I didn't think it was so bad, especially because it only pulled back to this volume shelf. That was confirmed this week as well when we had this wick up back from the bull band. So it definitely wasn't as bearish as it first looked. This death cross as well, starting to pinch together. Love that, as well as we got the oversold marker here. RSI is flat, so there's plenty of room up there. And a golden bar on the flow, and it's only just turned bullish on the weekly. So I think if earnings can bring some good news, this could be the catalyst. I don't trade earnings based on that, but it plays into my long-term thesis. So getting some momentum behind this one would do really well for my portfolio. So hopefully the market likes what they've got to say. Again, I think it's going to be sentiment around credit and their loan book that's going to be the real factor here, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Hopping back on the daily chart, I just wanted to say that whilst the technicals for this stock look excellent for a launch point, this is really going to be overridden by fundamentals and how that's perceived by the market. But obviously don't just go from your first reaction with the numbers and the earnings call, really get stuck in, look into it, see if your thesis is broken or if it's just further supported, and if you believe the market's wrong, why. You need to be aware of these things. For me personally, I'm not adding to this position unless we get a pullback. I slip under 10% weighting. I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows? Stranger things have happened in this market. If they do pull back guidance again, they could sell off. I'd likely buy that dip. Trim wise, I've been holding this for a while. I still think it's cheap, and it's going to be cheap for a while, especially given the growth they should see when rates come down and their loan book starts to expand. I'm probably not going to sell anything until we get a new 52-week high on this one, and that's probably going to be around $12 if we take a look. So we can go back to the start of the year. Start of the year was $10 was the highest, but I'd probably go based on this one in this range. I do have previous take profits in this area. I have been taking profits on this one, but since we've been back down here, I haven't been interested. I've just more been accumulating shares. Taking a look at the open options interest for Sofi, $7, huge strike target there. So that's going to be very strong support. So like I mentioned in looking at the chart, it's going to be hard to see more downside unless they came in with something quite bad. I think that's my expectation anyway. There is resistance at 750, 8 and 850, but it's not particularly focused at any of those levels. So we'll have to see what earnings do. If we put to the week after earnings, it looks like the market does switch to more of a bullish outlook, $10 being the more local resistance on that one. And if we take a look at the 25-year end, this one, it looks more bullish as well again. We've got resistance at $10 and $15, and then support a little bit at $7 and $5. So pretty much my thesis that this is going to do well throughout the year to the year end next year. And then 2026, again, the target's at 10. Most likely people just want a bit more time to see this play out, seeing as it's taken a while already. And then we've got more resistance here at 15 and 20. Downside support is $5 on that one as well. Next up, we've got Tesla. Everyone loves to hate this one and hates to love it. I'm a bit strange on this one. I actually want it to drop more, even though I really am bullish on it. I want it to be cheaper so I can buy more. It's obviously got this outstanding gap here. It tried to fill it, couldn't quite get it. I'd love if it did. Historically, Tesla does like to fill its gaps. So fingers crossed we do see more downside on this to this resistance confluence. It'd be really nice to see it get to these levels. 200 especially, I would love that. Tesla is a bit of a weird one. Obviously, a lot of people questioning why it's expensive right now, which it is based on forward earnings and all that jazz, probably by most metrics. But Tesla, it's purely based on future growth. If you believe in that growth, then you should buy shares at this price because they will be cheap looking forward several years. So if you believe Tesla is not going to achieve even a third of what it plans to do, then I probably wouldn't buy the shares because it's purely based on growth. We're looking at this. My expectation is 2025, we start to see a lot of the fruits of that. That's about a year away, I think. Obviously, the auto industry has been decimated, so that's really been a drag. We've missed a bunch of earnings. This earnings I actually didn't find too bad. I really enjoyed the energy numbers. That's primarily the segment that I'm really excited about in the near term, as well as Tesla semis. But they're not even coming till 2025. So why I'm buying Tesla is for things that aren't even happening right now. Well, they're happening, but we're not seeing the fruits of those labors, as it were. So that's my word of warning to anyone that's going to complain why I'm buying Tesla. I'm buying it purely based on my expectations for future growth. I run a couple of models and the numbers are insane. So I'm very excited to be a part of that. Tesla typically nails most of their projects. I mean, you can't argue with Elon and the success he's made in a bunch of his companies. Man's got too much energy, must never sleep. If we look at the chart, Obviously, we've talked about me wanting price to come down here. I do think price will start rising again as we get closer to year end when rates come down. We're going to see more front running for this one, purely based on the growth we were expecting. Downside as well, obviously, we talked about this confluence here, but there's a lot of support levels. I think going sub 200 would be a bit of a challenge, but if it did, this 180, 170 range is pretty strong. I would love, love, love to buy shares in this price range again. RSI is neutral on the daily. The whales have slid out a little bit on the daily, but not hugely so. That's quite bullish, I think. So I'm not sure we're going to see too much more of a sell-off. Obviously, I'm very excited if we do. But, I mean, the chart doesn't look that bearish to me, not on the daily anyway. Let's take a look at the weekly. Obviously, we have this really big candle on the weekly. But, I mean, yes, it's a large candle, but it's only put us back 1, 2, 3 weeks. The world is not ending for Tesla. It's easier to see all the confluence here. It's just getting really tight there. And then you've got this volume shelf at $180. I think a lot of people will have this as their short target. So if it does come to dropping down this low, obviously they're going to close and flip. So I'm pretty confident that level will not break. RSI again neutral. The golden cross is still expanding on the weekly, which is nice to see, and flow is still bullish, though it's having a little pause, and the whales are still in. Again, this doesn't look as bearish as it does at first glance with this large candle. It looks much more like a run-of-the-mill backtest, but we'll see how price reacts. If it can break back above this and out, that's probably more bullish than it staying in this area. But if it did choose to chop around in here a bit, I'm not going to complain because I will be buying more shares. Targets wise on this one, I've mentioned a couple of times just now that if price does go lower, I do want to buy. Upside target, I don't really want to sell much, if not anything, for as long as possible on this one. Obviously, we've talked about all the good things coming in 2025. I do have my thesis on this on my website if you want to go check that out, and I've not quite completed my Tesla earnings update. I've been quite busy. It's been really nice weather here in the UK, so I've been taking advantage of that, doing all garden chores and all that stuff. But if we then move on to the Tesla open options interest, taking a look here, 200, probably the largest support there. Not a whole lot of resistance really. It's thin on the ground, not a lot of volume. Taking a little look the week out, bit more bullish again with a resistance of 300. I think a lot of the calls will have a 300 strike for year end. Probably actually we can check that one if we look at the January 25. Oh, it's higher than I thought it would be. Oh, people are really getting bullish into year end on this one then. So that's exciting. Let me just move this down. We are starting to get, well, that's quite impressively high. I think that's way more bullish than I would have expected. 160 is the low around here, 160, 180. Like I've mentioned before, I don't think we'll get that low, even though support isn't super strong, but these resistance levels will be very strong. I actually don't expect us to get to that level by the end of 2025, but we'll see. It depends how all the new products will go, but people do love to front run Tesla, so it could happen. I'm not saying it can't. Taking a little look out to Jan 2026, we've got these high targets again that are continuing on. They're a little bit lower, and then we've got the $300 resistance again. Bear in mind these targets are quite far out, and this is likely to change over the next year, but it's nice to see a snapshot of how the market's feeling today for Tesla's price in a few years. On to my favorite stock, PayPal. Pretty popular name right now, I'm sure, for this stock. Still range bound. It's kind of flip-flopping around this black trend line. Doesn't know if it wants to stay up or below. This red historical support line is holding for now. I'd much prefer to see this get back above this volume shelf at the very least, and then on to this black trend line. Breakdown below here is not ideal. Below that is $55 roughly, and then you've got a bit of an air gap down to this $51 range. Not particularly thrilled about that. I still think PayPal's cheap even as a value buy, but we shall see. RSI fairly neutral. The death cross started to separate a little bit more. I don't like that. I'd prefer it to pinch together. Who wouldn't? And the whales have been sliding out of this as retail have just ate this up. We do have the third golden bar on the float. Typically, that's quite a bullish sign, so we'll see how that plays out. We've got earnings coming up here. Hoping this is finally the time when people realise things are looking good. I think a lot of the products that they're working on won't be hitting the bottom line in this quarter, but they could give us some more insight, and hopefully they don't absolutely sandbag earnings again, because the guidance has been pretty poor. I think that's why a lot of people aren't particularly pleased, but we'll see. Moving on to the weekly. Again, it's still ranging. Not much has changed in the last week. Yes, we've got a bit lower, but we're still on the volume shelf. RSI's flat. Whales, not much change really, and flow is negative. So overall, nothing exciting, business as usual, but it's going to be down to earnings and fundamentals what's going to start the movement on this one. I've been waiting a while. I'm happy to wait a bit longer. I still think it's incredibly valued. My adds and trims, I'm not adding to this one because I am overweight. I don't have any plans, even if we fall down quite considerably. I think I would still be quite overweight. Trimming, I'm probably going to hold most of my position to maybe I trim out a little bit at 75, but probably hundreds more where my target is going to be. But this was all my expectation for the business just returning back to normal, to their median. That I didn't account for the ads business in those targets, so I want to see how those products develop over time, because I might end up lifting my targets on this one and holding a smaller position past $100, but we'll see. Open options interest for PayPal. Looking a bit more bullish here for the short term earnings and such. $64 is going to be the resistance. That's quite a generous jump from where it is now. Looking out to the week after earnings, a lot more negative. I'm not sure why this changes so abruptly. I think it changes again. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. There must be. I'll have to look into that one. I suspect it might be a bit of a red herring, but we'll see. If we look out to 2025. Targets again much higher than my own personal targets, but we'll see. It's good to know that that's how the market's feeling in the future. 2026. Again, targets are a little bit lower, but this is a better approximation of where I think they'll go within the next year or so. But we'll see. Moving on to Cleanspark, we can see the range continues, although it does seem to be coming to a little bit of a pinnacle here. This is going to move with Bitcoin when that does go, so I expect to see some nice moves there coming. We'll talk a bit more about Bitcoin after this one, though. RSI is flat. The golden cross, death cross is kind of flip-flopping. It looks like it just can't decide, so I think when we do get a breakout, it's going to be quite a volcanic move. Probably more than this previous one here. I don't want to jinx it too much, though, so touch wood. Volume shelf as well, we're above that, and between the bull market band. The bull market band has been chunking out, but I'd rather see that come together and switch to the green on top, which would be more of a bullish sign. For that to happen, the band does need to thin out a little bit, which will make it weaker and easier to break. But just below that, we have this nice support level here. So I don't see too much downside on this one. I think price has got to move up on this one. I'm not buying more though, because I am at the weighting I want. Other than that, flow's pretty neutral, so it looks like it's building for something. It's just not super clear which way it wants to go. My instinct tells me up, but we'll see. Like I said, it is going to drive from the Bitcoin price, and we didn't get a pump during the weekend for the Bitcoin conference. It moved a little bit in the day after, but not as much as I think a lot of people were. Weekly as well, we can see this is getting super rangy, very wicky, riding the volume shelf here. It definitely looks like there's more support below it than there is resistance to the upside. So my expectation would be up, especially with the whales being still over 50% as well, even though the RSI is flat and the flow's flat. So it looks more bullish on the weekly. We did briefly mention that I'm not adding to this position, but for my take profits, I do see a lot more upside on this one. I don't think I'm going to trim till we get back to a new local high, which will be over this $24 range and over this fib line. Pretty much I'll trim off, take a little bit of risk off the table, but only likely a small amount until we get up to this 28 golden Fibonacci level. That's going to be a much harder level to beat. Open options interest for Cleanspark, we've got, it kind of sits around here at $18 as resistance, and then again at $20. And then if we take a look outside for the week after, we drop down to $14 for support. $20 seems a pretty good area for resistance, which lines up pretty well with the technical chart as well. I don't look at the long dated options on this one purely because they're potentially past the Bitcoin cycle peak, so I'm not really interested in what the market thinks price will be there. It's probably going to be lower than it is now. Oh, interesting. Well, that's risky. I would not advise that. Taking a little look at Bitcoin here, price is doing exactly what I really wanted it to do, chopping around above this support level with the volume shelf and then this purple trend line and the green Fibonacci level. This is what you want. You want price to sort of waffle around a bit, build up some energy to make a much bigger move. There was a little bit of hope that Bitcoin would do its large move and push this yellow line and then come back down and back test it, this level. That would have been amazing, but it's not happened like that. It did pump a little bit, as you can see, but it's wicked down here. Not too worried. This still looks pretty bullish. I'm not surprised it's hesitating a little bit at this level. I don't really know what people were thinking about the Bitcoin conference, that something groundbreaking was going to be announced, but mostly it was a lot of butt licking. So bear that in mind if you're wondering why nothing exciting happened. If we take a look at first we'll take a look at this RSI, not overheated. Bitcoin can go a lot higher. Golden Cross is still separating, which is impressive, and whales are still coming in and flow's still good. Then if we look at the weekly, this still looks really bullish. The fact that we had this wick and we didn't come back down, I like that. RSI is a little bit lower. We did have the bearish divergence that has cooled off, so I'm not too concerned about that. And we did tick oversold and then push up quite nicely with flow still kind of bullish, but not amazing. So technical wise, it still looks good. It just needs a bit of momentum. That obviously can depend on a lot of factors. So going forward, I would still like to see us get above this level and then back test it. That would be super bullish. I would really want to load the boat if that happened. There's also a written version of this kind of video. You can find it on my website at www.thecraftytrader.com. It's probably got slightly more detail, as I've probably glossed over quite a bit on here. But if you found this useful at all, feel free to give me a like, share and subscribe. Hopefully we can continue to learn together.